So to all my peoples balling on a budget out there, there's a relatively cheap option that'll help you out quite a bit. If you've been around the verse long enough, you know it's in an unoptimized state, so folks are always looking for ways to improve Star Citizen performance on their PCs, because bad performance kills the whole experience of living your best space life. A little tough to feel like you're in the expanse at 15 frames a second. Before you start stretching out your shopping fingers, there's a space whale in the room that needs to be addressed. There's been a ton of internet solutions out there. Page files, upscaling apps, and resizable bars, and spells of binding, and burning sage. Some of them help a touch, maybe a handful of frames, and then others just plain don't do anything. One of the upgrades that nobody will tell you is to take off that mechanical drive and put it on an SSD. That's facts. You'll alleviate a lot of issues by installing it on the SSD if you're running it on a spinny platter drive. Other people would suggest 1,000,000 gigs of RAM, and while running 8 gigs is a little rough, 16 works and 32 is plenty. The more you feed Star Citizen, the more it'll request but not actually utilize. GPUs are that cure-all solution that folks usually throw at games, but not in this case. An RTX 4090 won't see more than 40% usage in Star Citizen. A high-end GPU is nice to have, but the returns will diminish very quickly in this game. I stream and create content with solid frames on a 3070, and I started with a 2070 Super. A buddy of mine has a 3060 Ti, and he often has better performance because of one thing. He knows the ingredient that a lot of Star Citizens are missing. Star Citizen is highly dependent on your CPU, and we're not talking about standing by with the rubber gloves and a bottle of dry ice while you overclock it to failure. I mean, do what you need to do. That's not gonna take it to the next level. The secret ingredient in Star Citizen, cache is king.
What for is that there cache thing?
Cache is memory that sits on the processor, which makes it quicker to access than running over to the RAM, getting the info and bringing it back. If you don't have enough cache, then the graphics card is sitting there tapping his feet waiting on the CPU to deliver while instructions pile up like those dirty clothes in the back of your closet. Yeah, I said it. Then you got yourself a good old bottleneck CPU. Well, how much cache do you need? When I started in the verse, I had a Ryzen 7 2700X, which has 16 megs of L3 cache. I got by, but it wasn't what you call a great experience. The single biggest performance upgrade I got was when I swapped the 2700X for a Ryzen 9 5900X, which has 64 megs of L3 cache. People watching my streams ask how I get the frames that I do. That's it. My buddy that I mentioned gets higher frames than me at times because he traded up from his 5800X to a 5800X 3D, which has 96 megs of cache. He has a 3060 versus my 3070, and we both have different clock speeds, SSDs, and RAM, and all kind of different variables, but it goes back and forth between us, with his PC performing better sometimes, and sometimes mine does. So what's that got to do with this here budget stuff you talking about there, boss? AMD got some new coming to help you out with that cache situation. Right now, my 5900X costs about $300, and the 5800X 3D costs $350 to $400 depending on where you get it. However, at the end of the month, they dropped the 5700X 3D, $249 for an 8-core 16-thread chip with 96 megs of L3 cache, just like the 5800X 3D. They extended the life of the AM4 boards with another CPU. Another one. The trade-off is the lower clock speed. Base clock is 3 gigs with a boost up to 4.1, which isn't phenomenal, but fine enough. By comparison, the 5800X 3D is 3.4 base and 4.5 boost. $100 cheaper for just as much cache with a slower clock. The difference the speed makes remains to be seen. It's just about the same difference between my processor and my buddies on the boost side. And like I said, they swing back and forth like Jonah Hill. The CPU should become even better when Star Citizen development puts those extra cores to use. The rumor flying around is that Star Citizen will adopt DLSS2 and FSR2 in the next major patch or two. So everybody should benefit from AMD and NVIDIA's make it go faster tech when they become a thing in the game. If you ain't already know, DLSS and FSR upscales and generates additional frames for a smoother experience. Smooth is smoother than smooth. How accurate those rumors are, who knows? But the bottom line is that you'll be getting more performance options that don't require you to open up your wallet for new hardware. But for now though, if your performance in Star Citizen needs a shot of vitamin B12, 5700X 3D will put some pep in this step. It releases January 31st. If you really want to see a slim budget go to work at Star Citizen, and check out this vid. Big shout out to all my execs, Patreons, YouTube members, and super chatters. Fly dirty citizens.